daily intelligence brief. This is a special deep dive, and since it's Tuesday, September 16th, 2025, well, let's face it, Monday may have set the tone, but Tuesday, that's when reality really hits.
In the markets, too, usually.
Exactly. So we're covering the intelligence brief for yesterday, Monday, September 15th, 2025. Our mission today is simple. Equip you with the insights you need to really understand the forces at play, not just the headlines. So let's jump right in. Top of yesterday's brief, quite a day. First, the Middle East. We saw Arab and Muslim leaders meeting in Doha. They condemned Israel's September 9th strike on Hamas officials there in Qatar, and they're demanding diplomatic and economic measures.
Right. A strong reaction. And Netanyahu's response?
Immediate. Vowed to target Hamas wherever they are.
Yeah.
So very clear opposing stances there. Then, shifting over to Europe, Russia issued a pretty stark warning, said it'll retaliate against any European state trying to seize its frozen assets for Ukraine's war effort.
A serious threat. Raises all sorts of legal and financial questions.
It does. And yet, kind of paradoxically, European stocks actually rallied. Hit 3-week highs, I think, led by luxury and defense shares.
Interesting dynamic there. We should probably unpack that later.
Definitely. Okay, across to North America. The U.S. economy, bit of a mixed bag. Inflation climbed 0.4%, but jobless claims also surged to 263,000.
Yeah, highest since late 2021, I believe, which puts the Fed in a tight spot this week.
Exactly. Fuels expectations for a rate cut, even with quite a bit of political pressure swirling around. Moving over to Asia, China's economy showing signs of slowing down. Factory output, retail sales, both a bit sluggish.
Which has global implications, of course.
Absolutely. And elsewhere in Asia, Japan successfully tested a ship-mounted railgun, hypervelocity strikes.
Significant military tech development there, keeping an eye on regional defense postures.
Yeah. Okay, on the climate and disaster front, some grim news. Devastating floods in Bali killed 14 people, displaced hundreds more.
Just awful. And likely climate-linked, those intensified monsoons.
Seems likely. And then Australia released a national climate risk assessment. Stark warning. 1.5 million people could face sea level rise by 2050.
A huge number. Really drives home the long-term threat.
It really does. Africa facing compounding crises. Renewed Ebola outbreaks in the DRC.
And on top of that, conflict in Kivu is disrupting their coffee production. Vital income source.
Yeah, a double blow. And quickly, Latin America. Venezuela accusing the U.S. of aggression after some naval strikes. Ecuador tightened visa rules for Venezuelans.
Reflecting those regional pressures and the migration crisis.
And Brazil's economy contracted again for the third month running.
Concerning trend for South America's largest economy.
Finally, some different news from Oceania. A surprise athletics victory for New Zealand's Geordie Beamish in the steeplechase.
Oh, that was quite an upset.
Yeah. And alongside that, they're stepping up conservation efforts under their Predator-Free 2050 campaign.
Good to hear some positive environmental action, too.
Okay, that is a lot to unpack, and we are definitely going to dive deeper. But first, just a quick note. This deep dive is powered by NextSight. They're a global investigations and intelligence leader. Their open source intelligence platform, SiteConnect, that's what powers these reports. OSINT, leverages publicly available info from tons of sources to give you that complete picture.
It's incredibly powerful for understanding complex situations.
Totally. And NextSight's capabilities let you tailor intelligence to your specific priorities. Complex cross-border investigations, corporate intelligence, you name it. Their work is consistently precise, fast, and fully corroborated. Top-level stuff.
Really sets a high standard.
It does. You can learn more at www.next-site.com. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission, as we said, go beyond the headlines, understand the forces at play. We want to connect the dots between these seemingly separate events.
And you'll hear us mention things like Admiralty flags or confidence levels. That's just our shorthand for source reliability.
Right. Think of it like this. A means highly reliable. B is credible, but maybe still evolving. The number tells you about corroboration. It's just how we signal the strength of the intel we're sharing with you.
Transparency, basically.
Exactly. So we got a lot to dive into. Geopolitical tensions, economic shifts, climate challenges. Let's start with the Middle East. tensions really ratcheted up after that Israeli strike in Qatar on September 9th.
Yeah, it's quite striking, actually, how quickly that one incident created such widespread diplomatic fallout. You have Arab and Muslim leaders meeting in Doha, and they're not just, issuing condemnations, they're demanding coordinated diplomatic and economic measures against Israel.
That sounds like more than just rhetoric.
Oh, absolutely. It carries real weight. It could potentially threaten the already fragile progress we've seen with things like the Abraham Accords.
Right.
That summit on the 15th, you had leaders from Qatar, Egypt, Jordan specifically calling it a violation of sovereignty. Very strong language.
And Netanyahu's response was equally forceful, right? Targeting Hamas wherever they are.
Exactly, a direct counter. And the international community is definitely paying attention. The UN Human Rights Council has actually scheduled an urgent debate for today, the 16th, to look into the legality of the strike.
Who requested that?
The Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the Gulf Cooperation Council. So, significant regional bodies pushing for scrutiny. Israel, for its part, has called the whole debate absurd.
So a real diplomatic standoff. What's the key insight here for our listeners?
Well, I think it's about that delicate, often contradictory dance in high-stakes diplomacy. For you, the listener, these tensions, they could genuinely disrupt global energy markets. Defense cooperation, too. It's definitely carrying a high threat level right now.
That brings up a crucial point, though, because even with all this diplomatic outrage, the U.S. seems to be trying to keep channels open. Our sources mentioned Secretary of State Rubio urging Qatar to keep mediating the hostage talks.
Right, and that immediately forces you to ask, how do you balance that? Strong condemnation on one hand, but needing Qatar as a critical interlocutor on the other, especially in such a volatile region.
Yeah, it's a tightrope walk.
Absolutely. Washington clearly sees Qatar's role as indispensable, for securing the release of those 48 hostages and trying to prevent further escalation. But public sentiment, it's hugely polarized.
How are you seeing that play out?
Well, you see it online, for instance, social media. A Doha-based academic tweeted something like, Israel's strike is a violation of Qatar's sovereignty and the rules of engagement. Got a lot of traction.
Okay.
Then, on the flip side, you have an Israeli analyst on X insisting Hamas leaders are legitimate targets wherever they hide. And you saw hashtags like hashtag stand with Qatar and hashtag defend Israel trending regionally. Really shows the deep divisions.
And the reliability on this. You mentioned sources earlier.
Yeah, the intel brief flags this as Admiralty B2. So the information is generally seen as credible, corroborated by multiple outlets. Reuters, I-24 News were mentioned, but it's still an evolving situation.
Got it. B2, credible but developing. Okay, so while things are simmering in the Middle East, let's pivot to Europe. Russia's warning about frozen assets. How serious is that threat? What could they actually do?
Well, it's definitely an escalating area of concern. Dmitry Medvedev, the former president, was quite blunt. He warned Moscow would, quote, sue and go after any European state trying to seize those assets for Ukraine.
A direct threat of legal action, then.
Exactly. It's a direct response to those EU proposals to use the interest from the frozen reserves for a reparations loan for Ukraine. Moscow calls it theft. Europe argues Russia should pay for war damages.
So what are the real-world implications for investors, for governments?
Well, it significantly heightens the legal and financial risks for anyone holding Russian bonds. And maybe more broadly, it could deter foreign governments from keeping their reserves in European depositories. It could chip away at trust in the financial system.
Okay, that's a big potential impact. What's the assessment level on this?
The brief gives this a moderate threat level. The data and quotes are well-sourced, but the situation is clearly evolving, so it's flagged Admiralty B3.
B3, okay. But connecting back to what we said earlier, despite these very serious geopolitical headwinds, European stocks actually rallied, closed near 3-week highs on Monday. Luxury goods, defense contractors doing well.
Yeah, LVMH, Kering, Airbus, BAE Systems all saw gains.
It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? With Russia making threats.
It does on the surface, but this contrast is telling. It suggests investors might be rotating into cyclical sectors. They're likely fueled partly by continued Chinese consumer demand, but also anticipating that potential rate cut from the U.S. Federal Reserve we mentioned.
Ah, the Fed anticipation effect.
Exactly. Plus, sadly, escalating global conflicts often boost defense stocks. So it's a complex mix. Geopolitical tensions are concerning, absolutely, but they aren't necessarily dampening all investment appetite, especially if other economic signals, like potential easing from the Fed, are pointing elsewhere.
Okay, putting this into that broader context, let's move properly to North America now. The U.S. economy, the Fed. You said it's a conundrum this week. Mixed signals, right?
Very much so. It's a striking dimension, this delicate balance the Fed has to strike. You had new data Monday showing that U.S. consumer prices climbed 0.4% in August. Inflation's still sticky.
Right.
But at the same time, initial jobless claims surged to 263,000. That's the highest since October 2021, as I said.
So higher inflation and weakening jobs.
Precisely. That confluence really fuels expectations for maybe a 25 basis point, a 0.25% rate cut at their meeting later this week. But it also simultaneously sparks those fears of stagflation, stagnant economy, rising prices.
Yeah, the worst of both worlds. Have markets priced this cut in already?
Seems like it, largely. That's partly why global equities got a boost and the dollar weakened a bit, but the underlying situation is just, well, it's profoundly complex for the policymakers.
And beyond just the numbers, the Fed's facing political heat too, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this immediately forces us to ask that important question about central bank independence. You have former President Trump publicly demanding deeper cuts, even insulting Fed officials.
Yeah, I saw some of that.
And then there are actual legal battles threatening to alter the board's composition. Lawsuits trying to remove Governor Lisa Cook, seat a new nominee. It's quite direct partisan maneuvering.
Which challenges the Fed's legitimacy right when they need it most.
Exactly. They're trying to navigate this narrow path, balancing persistent inflation against slowing employment. And this political interference could really undermine confidence, both public and market confidence, increase volatility for you, the investor.
What's the Intel assessment on this specific pressure?
It's rated moderate threat level. There's moderate uncertainty because it's evolving, so confidence 3. Admiralty B3 for the political pressure analysis, B2 for the core economic data itself.
How's this playing out with the public?
You see the tension reflected online, lots of people lamenting the cost of living. One user saying something like, rent and groceries keep climbing while wages stay flat, urging the Fed to stop dragging its feet. Then you have conservative commentators echoing Trump's attacks on Chair Powell, while progressive voices are urging more focus on worker rights. So pressure from all sides.
No easy decisions for the Fed this week, then. Okay, let's shift gears quite dramatically now to Africa, specifically the DRC. A really grim convergence of crises there, health emergencies and conflict.
Yes, the situation in the DRC is incredibly dire. On Monday, the country declared a new Ebola outbreak. Kasai province this time. The numbers are alarming. 81 confirmed cases already, 28 deaths. And tragically, that includes 4 health workers.
4 health workers. That's terrible. Is this related to previous outbreaks?
Genetic analysis suggests not. It looks like a new spillover from animals, which just underscores that ongoing risk of zoonotic diseases emerging.
What's the response looking like?
Well, ring vaccination and contact tracing are underway. But it's severely complicated. The health infrastructure is limited, and they're dealing with concurrent outbreaks of mpox, cholera, and measles.
Wow, all at once.
All at once. And there's a significant risk of it spreading to neighboring Angola, which would just widen the crisis. We're hearing from health workers there, sharing videos on WhatsApp, pleading for more protective gear, saying things like, we are exhausted and need vaccines now.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And is misinformation playing a role?
Troublingly, yes. There were rumors spreading on Facebook, apparently, falsely claiming Ebola vaccines cause infertility. Public health officials are having to spend precious time countering that kind of dangerous misinformation.
Just makes an awful situation even harder. What's the reliability flag on this?
This is official data coming from the WHO and the DRC Health Ministry, so it's flagged A3. And it represents a high threat level because it's such a severe health emergency.
A3 high threat. Got it.
Yeah.
And as if Ebola wasn't enough, you mentioned conflict hitting their economy, specifically coffee.
Yes, and this really brings to light that key challenge of how interwoven these crises become. There's escalating fighting between the DRC government and M23 rebels, particularly in North and South Kivu, prime coffee-growing regions.
The farmers are being displaced.
Exactly. They're being forced to abandon their fields. Our sources are reporting beans are literally rotting on the bushes. Output could just erase all the recent gains they'd made. Farmers' incomes plummeting, think from maybe US $300 down to just US $50 per harvest.
Devastating for livelihoods.
Absolutely. It's not just an agricultural problem. It's a direct threat to livelihoods. It worsens poverty, hunger, and it undermines the country's foreign exchange earnings. It's a stark example of how conflict and potentially ecological factors just compound health and economic emergencies.
Another high-threat situation, then.
Yes, this is also flagged as high threat level. The source is a Reuters report flagged B3.
Okay, connecting these dots globally, Climate-linked disasters also hitting hard. We mentioned Bali in Australia earlier. Let's look closer.
Yeah, and it's a striking to mention here that contrast between the immediate tragic event like in Bali and the long-term systemic warning like from Australia.
Tell us about Bali first.
Heavy monsoon rains, which reports suggest were intensified by climate change, caused absolutely devastating floods, killed 14 people, displaced hundreds more. 2 people were still missing as of the report. Rescuers still working after floods hit 6 of Bali's 8 regions. Just a terrible human toll.
And the source on that?
That's a B3 flagged report via Reuters. Moderate threat level assigned.
B3, moderate. Okay. But then zooming out, as you said, Australia's National Climate Risk Assessment.
Yeah.
That delivered a very different kind of message, a long-term one.
Indeed, a powerful warning. The report estimates over 1.5 million Australians could face sea level rise by 2050. That's nearly 600,000 by just 2030.
Yeah, those numbers are staggering.
They really are. And the report identified what it called compounding and cascading hazards, floods, cyclones, droughts, heat waves, and it explicitly stated that disadvantaged and indigenous communities will suffer disproportionately.
So it's an equity issue, too.
Absolutely. And it's not just environmental damage. They put a potential figure on real estate losses, US $406 billion. It highlights the urgent need for adaptation investments now.
What's the flag on this report?
This was an official government report sourced via UPI, so it's flagged A2. Also assigned a moderate threat level, but clearly with massive long-term implications.
A2, moderate. And how did people react there?
Well, Australian climate advocates quickly jumped on it using the hashtag risk assessment. They were calling for bolder emissions cuts, pointing out, 1.5 million Aussies at risk means we need climate justice now.
Right.
So both these events, Bali's immediate tragedy and Australia's long-term warning, they just underscore the urgency, climate action, resilient public health systems. They're not abstract concepts anymore.
Yeah, the consequences are very real right now and accelerating. Okay, beyond those major themes, the brief touched on a few other notable global developments. Quick rundown.
Sure. In Asia, as we touched on, China's economy showing that slowdown.
Yeah.
Factory output, retail sales, disappointing forecasts. The takeaway there isn't just a dip. It signals a potential recalibration, maybe, of global consumer demand, supply chains could impact economies far beyond China.
Right. And the Japanese railgun test.
Yeah, that ship-mounted railgun. It's not just a tech demo. It's a significant step in defense against hypersonic threats. Marks a real shift in military tech and regional strategy. Something to watch.
Definitely. And Latin America. Key takeaways there.
Well, Venezuela accusing the U.S. of aggression after those naval strikes, that obviously heightens regional tensions. Ecuador tightening visa rules for Venezuelans speaks directly to that ongoing migration crisis and the strain on neighbors.
And Brazil's economy.
Contracting for a third consecutive month, that's concerning, not just for Brazil, but for the whole South American trade dynamic, given Brazil's size.
Okay. But it wasn't all challenging news, right? Oceania had some positive notes.
Absolutely. Nice to have some balance. New Zealand had that unexpected athletics win, Jordy Beamish stunning the champion in the steeplechase. Always great to see an underdog story.
Yeah, good for him.
And maybe more significantly, on a broader scale, they're expanding community efforts for conservation. That predator-free 2050 campaign to protect native birds. It shows a real commitment to environmental stewardship, a collective effort, maybe a model for others.
Good to end on those notes.
Yeah.
Okay, just a reminder as you listen, Next Sight's capabilities go way beyond just reporting. They're OSINT specialists, they're investigative teams, they connect dots across borders, validate sources, and turn all these fragmented signals into actionable strategy.
Invaluable in today's world.
Absolutely. That concludes the Monday, September 15th, 2025 Intelligence Brief, brought to you on this Tuesday, September 16th Deep Dive. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and Spotify. Share your thoughts, like, comment, spread the word. Stay informed, stay sharp.
And may your intelligence brief be clearer than the global forecast.
Indeed. And finally, for you, our learner, here's something to consider. In a world where information, and let's be honest, misinformation, travels at hypervelocity, how can we each get better at distinguishing the signals from the noise? And how do we apply this knowledge to truly understand the bigger picture, not just those fleeting headlines? Something to think about.